A hardware store wrench, $5. Small enough to fit in your pocket, and it nearly sent a billion-dollar spacecraft tumbling into the void. What happens when the simplest tool becomes the most dangerous object in orbit? Context: in one breath. In May 2007, astronauts aboard the International Space Station were installing new solar arrays, panels that would power humanity's only permanent home beyond Earth. The ISS orbited 250 miles above the planet, traveling at 17,500 miles per hour. One crew member was outside during a spacewalk, tethered to the hull, tools clipped to their suit. This story matters because it reveals a truth engineers rarely admit. In space, there is no such thing as a small mistake. The wrench incident became a case study in NASA training programs, a reminder that the most catastrophic failures often begin with the most ordinary objects. Timeline of key events: the spacewalk begins on June 18, 2007. Astronauts began the delicate work of unfurling the station's new solar arrays. The panels stretched longer than a football field when fully extended. Inside the cramped airlock, mission specialists Rick Sturkow and Clayton Anderson prepared their tools, checking each item on a tether. Outside, the sun rose and set every 90 minutes as the station circled the globe. The task required precision. Each bolt, each connector had to align perfectly in the vacuum. Anderson clipped a ratchet wrench to his suit, a standard tool mass-produced identical to thousands sold in stores across America. The wrench measured about 13 inches long. It weighed roughly 1 pound. The moment of release, somewhere between securing a bolt and reaching for the next attachment point, the wrench came loose. Not dropped exactly. In microgravity, objects don't fall, they drift. Anderson reached for the tool and watched it slip from his gloved hand, tumbling slowly away from the station. Lower third. Relative velocity, approximately 4 mph. Mission Control in Houston received the call immediately. "Houston, we've had a tool release." The words were calm, procedural, but in that moment the wrench became something else entirely. It became orbital debris, a projectile traveling at the station's velocity, now on its own trajectory. The chase that never happened. Ground controllers ran the numbers within minutes. The wrench was moving away from the ISS at roughly 4 miles per hour, a walking pace on Earth. In space, that separation became permanent. Anderson could see it, a glinting speck catching sunlight already beyond reach. No astronaut could safely chase it. No robotic arm could extend far enough. The tool entered its own orbit around Earth. NASA's Space Surveillance Network began tracking it, assigning it a catalog number like any other piece of debris. The wrench would circle the planet every 90 minutes, crossing paths with the ISS twice per orbit, missing by miles but close enough to matter. The 7-month vigil for the next 8 months. Flight controllers monitored the wrench's position. Source: NASA Orbital Debris Quarterly News, September 2007. Each time it approached the station's orbital plane, engineers calculated the missed distance. The closest approach came within a few miles, near enough that if trajectories had aligned differently, collision protocols would have triggered. The crew would have sealed modules, prepared for evacuation, waited in their Soyuz escape capsules. Question: how much damage can a wrench do at orbital velocity? The answer arrived through mathematics. At 17,000 miles per hour, even a paint fleck carries enough kinetic energy to crack a window. The wrench had the mass of a grenade. If it struck the station's hull, it would punch through aluminum like tissue paper, venting atmosphere, destroying equipment, potentially killing crew members inside. Evidence and verification: NASA documented the incident through multiple channels. Helmet camera footage captured the moment of release. Though the agency initially classified the video as operational data, document: NASA Flight Operations Directorate Report, Mission STS-117. Mission transcripts recorded the exact timestamp and Anderson's immediate notification to Houston. Source: NASA Public Affairs Office, June 2007. The Space Surveillance Network confirmed the wrench's orbital parameters within hours. Ground-based radar tracked the object, measuring its radar cross-section and tumble rate. Source: U.S. Space Command Debris Catalog, Object 31731. Independent astronomy enthusiasts using telescopes reported visual sightings of the wrench as it reflected sunlight during favorable passes. NASA spokesperson Kelly Humphreys stated that the tool posed minimal risk to the station but acknowledged that orbital debris guidelines required full tracking until atmospheric re-entry. Source: Space.com interview, June 19, 2007. The agency later confirmed that the wrench re-entered Earth's atmosphere on November 3, 2007, burning up over the Pacific Ocean. Document NASA Orbital Debris Program Office Re-entry Report. Conflicting views and gaps. Some analysts questioned whether the incident represented a genuine near-miss or a routine debris event, magnified by media attention. Former flight director Wayne Hale noted in his blog that thousands of objects orbit Earth, many larger than a wrench, and the station regularly performs debris avoidance maneuvers. Source: Wayne Hale's blog. After the Ride of a Lifetime, June 2007. Other experts pointed to the incident as evidence of inadequate tool tether protocols. Aviation Week reported that NASA reviewed its tool attachment procedures following the event, though the agency declined to characterize the review as a response to failure. Source: Aviation Week and Space Technology, July 2007. The exact mechanism of the wrench's release remains unclear. Anderson reported that the tether may have snagged on equipment, though no official determination was published. Infocard: What we know versus what remains uncertain. The cost of the wrench itself was never officially documented. The $5 figure became industry shorthand, a reminder that value in space has nothing to do with purchase price. Whether the tool actually cost $5 or $50, the symbolic point remained. The cheapest item in a toolkit became the most expensive mistake. Human impact: no one was hurt. The station suffered no damage. The wrench burned up harmlessly over open ocean, but the 7 astronauts aboard the ISS lived for months knowing that a tool one of them released was circling beneath them. A silent reminder of how thin the margin between safety and catastrophe can be. Clayton Anderson continued his mission, completing multiple additional spacewalks. In later interviews, he spoke carefully about the incident, emphasizing the team's response rather than the error itself. Source: NASA Oral History Project, 2009. The psychological weight of knowing you've created orbital debris, that your mistake is being tracked by military radar, that mission planners are calculating collision probabilities because of your actions. That weight doesn't appear in official reports. Sidebar: orbital debris means any human-made object in space that no longer serves a function. For engineers on the ground, the incident reinforced a fundamental truth about spaceflight. Everyone who works in mission control knows someone who made a similar mistake, or nearly did. The wrench became a teaching moment not because it was unique, but because it was captured, documented, and survived. Expert lens: why it matters. In space, kinetic energy becomes the invisible threat. Here's the simplest way to understand it. Imagine a baseball thrown at 100 miles per hour. Now multiply that speed by 175. That's orbital velocity. At those speeds, mass and speed combine into a destructive force that shreds metal and vaporizes on impact. Engineers call this the Kessler syndrome problem, named after NASA scientist Donald Kessler, who predicted it in 1978. Each piece of debris that collides creates more debris, exponentially. One wrench doesn't cascade into catastrophe, but one wrench multiplied by thousands of satellites, rocket stages, and careless releases creates a debris field that could make certain orbits unusable for generations. The legal dimension matters too. Under the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, nations remain liable for objects they launch, even after those objects stop functioning. The wrench remained U.S. property throughout its orbit. If it had struck another nation's satellite, complex questions of responsibility and compensation would have emerged. Space law exists in a framework built for the Cold War, barely updated for an era where private companies launch more satellites than governments. Mini recap: pattern break. Here's what we know for certain. A wrench was released during a spacewalk, tracked for months and re-entered safely. What we don't know: whether existing protocols are sufficient to prevent similar incidents, or whether we've just been lucky. The next generation of space operations is about to multiply these risks 1,000-fold. What's next? Scenarios: near-term commercial expansion, confidence high. Private space stations are under construction. Companies like Axiom and Blue Origin plan to launch modules by 2028. Each new station means more spacewalks, more tools, more chances for release. Training protocols developed from the wrench incident will be tested at unprecedented scale. Debris removal technology, confidence medium. Several companies are developing systems to capture and deorbit defunct satellites. Whether these can target wrench-sized objects remains unproven. The economics of cleaning up small debris may never make sense, meaning prevention remains the only realistic strategy. International coordination, confidence low. No binding treaty governs orbital debris creation. Nations share data through voluntary agreements, but enforcement mechanisms don't exist. As more countries develop space programs, the coordination problem grows more complex. The wrench incident happened when only 3 nations regularly performed spacewalks. Today, that number is growing. Outro and CTA, the most expensive objects in space aren't the satellites or the stations. They're the mistakes we make and can't take back. If you want to understand how modern space stations avoid debris collisions in real time, watch the algorithm that keeps the ISS from dying. It's about the autonomous systems that track thousands of objects every second, making split-second decisions about when to fire thrusters and move the entire station out of harm's way. Source notes and disclaimer. This script draws from NASA mission reports, official transcripts, space surveillance network data, and contemporary news coverage from 2007. Orbital parameters and technical details reflect publicly available information as of the incident date. Some dialogue and internal perspectives are reconstructed from published interviews and oral histories. Space debris tracking data changes continuously. Viewers should consult current sources for real-time information. This video aims to inform, not to assign blame or criticize individuals who work in extraordinarily demanding conditions. If you found this story informative and well presented, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel.